Well, hi, everybody. Welcome back to Speed Tips by Bob and Chad, episode number 104. Hope you guys are all having a nice warm day today and enjoying the heat, unless you're enjoying the rain, one or the other. Kind of seems like that's the case right now. Well, this week down here, Wednesday is supposed to be the decent day, and I think that's going to be 86. Otherwise, today it was like 90, 96 or 97, something like that, with a heat index of 102. It was super humid. And then the wind was blowing, so it was like standing in front of a blowtorch. So I decided I was going to be an inside guy most of the day today. So what's new with Chad?
Oh, not much. Just kicking off a new week here on the old Monday, and it was a little quiet today with everybody getting rained out,
Yeah.
getting ready for the Go for 50 is our next trackside deal next week at Deer Creek. So that should be a pretty good event for everybody, I think.
Yeah, that should be a great event. I mean, I'd like to see that event on that racetrack. I bet that'll be good.
Yeah,
I've never actually seen the late model event up there, but I mean, I can't believe it wouldn't be a good show.
and they're having a Dylan Scott concert, so I'm
Oh,
trying to figure out how they're going to get all them people in there.
awesome. Well, that's cool. And
Yeah,
what doesn't that pay like? I mean, isn't that like a really big payday for that deal?
I think it's 50,000. Yeah,
That's what I was thinking. I had read it's 50,000 to win.
yeah,
That'd be a nice day.
yeah,
Make the year go a little better.
right.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Yeah, we had a pretty decent day. It was uh, really busy this morning. The phone wasn't quite as busy this afternoon, but he still shipped out a fair amount of packages, better than what we had last Monday. Um, so that was pretty cool. But just kind of an average. What we normally have been averaging is an average day, and nowadays with all the weather and everything, if we can have an average day, I'm pretty satisfied with that.
Right on.
Yes, for sure. Shock sales have been good. I mean, I know they sold some shocks again today, and we had Jake McBurney did really well on Friday night. Won there at Marshalltown and led the whole thing. Started on the front row and led the whole thing. Um, the yeah, I'm really bad with names, but the Vanderbilt house car. I think if it had been about five more laps, I don't know if we'd have been. I don't know if Jake would have been. Jake might have been a second place car
Yeah,
because he was. They were. He was running him hard, and they were racing pretty seriously, but nice and clean. But they were taking that racing pretty serious. So it's pretty good. And Cam Reamers won Saturday night. He's sport mod. Came from God, I think he came from 11th, something like that, and took the lead at the checkered flag, at the flag stand by about 2 inches. So it was a heck of a show.
hmm.
So that was pretty good. First question. Russell says hello. Jeff says IMC Modified is a Dirtworks 9 Freelink. What are your thoughts on coilover on the right rear in front of the housing? Also, would you still run a 9010 with a 3 link? Um, if if it's a solid upper link, you don't need the 9010 because it won't do you any good. So I wouldn't run it if it's a sport mod, but if it's an actual modified, like you say, with a torque link a torque arm or something, not torque arm, a torque link in there, definitely will need to run a 9010. Now, it kind of depends on the actual torque link that you're running because some torque links, you might want to go like with a 6.2 or something like that. So it's kind of depends on the torque link. If you're running a spring bar, you definitely need a 9010. Let's see, what was the rest of this question? Coilover on the right rear in front of the housing. Well, it's not going to have as much traction off the corner, but it's going to have more speed in the middle of the corner to the point where I think you'll pick up momentum where the traction that you will lose, I don't know if you'll notice you'll lose it. I think you'll pick up speed in the middle of the corner. That works really well. Derek, hi, Bob. I have a UMP Pro Mod solid pull bar 3-link. What kind of pull bar angle do you recommend and pinion angle do you recommend? The bars at the lowest hole on the chassis and the top hole on the rear end. Um, that might sound like a fair amount of angle. I mean, you just have to actually measure it. I usually on those cars, like on our sport mod stuff, we run a 15-degree angle and like a 30-inch upper bar. Um, and then let's see, what was pinion angle. Usually those cars we run about 7 degrees. That seems to be pretty sufficient with it. Uh, I think you could probably actually get by with less. I'm not sure you couldn't get by with 5. We've just always run 7, and I mean, if you can get it to the point where the car goes, like if you jack up underneath the seat, take the right front spring out, and put it all in dynamic. If the pull bar was I mean, if the pinion angle was at about 2 degrees, that's about ideal because I mean, the most horsepower is going to be gained when that thing has no degrees in it. So that's kind of the objective. You just don't want to really go past that. Jason, UMP modified loss on throttle,
Loose.
loss on throttle off the
Loose.
corner. I lowered the left lower link on the chassis one whole Saturday, definitely tightened the car up the exit, but made the car horrible tight in the center. Couldn't even throttle out of it with a push in the center. Um, I'm not so sure there isn't other things that you could do to free the car up. What's your thoughts, Chad?
Well, I mean, one of the things you did is you took the angle and took steer out, to basically tighten your exit, but you tighten the center too much. So then, if you liked how that felt on exit, then you would raise the roll center up in the back, raise the panel bar up so you can roll the middle freer. Or if you um, change your dynamic steer location but keep the drive angle on the car. So there's a couple little balancing acts there that you can do, but a lot of the times you have to calm down that link because it's got too much steer and the cars just won't square up off the corner. They're just tailed out. So then you take left bottom rod angle out and it'll square up coming out of the hole. But if you're tight before that, then you would have to do something to free entry or free the middle there so you can roll to that position.
Yeah, that sounds good. Jeff says the car's still being put together, so would you use a solid pull bar or a spring bar? Well, in my opinion, if you can run some sort of a torque link, spring bar, biscuit bar, whatever, I would definitely use that over a solid bar because I think, solid bar has a lot of traction, but it's a little easier to break the tires loose, so you have to be a little bit more finesseful with it. But once it hooks up, it's got a lot of traction. The spring bar or a pull bar helps that finesse thing to the point where it hooks it up a little sooner and just makes the car a little easier to drive, especially on a slicker type racetrack.
I brought some show and tell.
Awesome.
So we obviously we build a lot of load sticks. We build load machines. We all use a SL load cell on there. And one of the things that we run into is people, they'll think their stick is wrong or their calibration is out or something. So they nut and bolt check like they would nut and bolt check the car. So this fitting here naturally has a hex, but all this is a compression fitting to hold this wire into this fitting. So don't ever touch that with a wrench, otherwise you'll end up pulling the wires out.
Sure.
So when you spin that fitting, you strip the wires off of the strain gauge inside of the load cells. So that's an unfortunate situation for this poor racer. We don't warranty those, so if you think your calibration is off on your load stick, the easiest way to check it is to take a load stick, find somebody with a smasher, or if you have a smasher, you can put the load stick in a load machine and check the calibration. So if the load machine says 500, the load stick should say 500. You're going to have to be careful because you're putting a solid device in there. So when you're bumping the switch on the machine, it don't take nothing to go to 4,000 because you're got a solid link. So you just tap that machine. You really only need a few 100-pound reading, and then if the stick reads the same as the machine, then you know your load stick is good. If it doesn't read the same, then you need to send it in to us for calibration. We use weight, a calculated weight that we know is perfect, so we actually calibrate off of that to make sure everybody's that goes out the door is perfect. So just a quick little tech tip on how to not wreck your load cells.
So what do you charge if somebody sends it in and has it calibrated, recalibrated?
We don't charge. If it's our load stick, you can send it in here and we'll fix it. We'll check it, and then if we have to fix it, if we have to put a load cell in or a readout in or something like that, we just charge for the parts. We don't charge for any of the labor.
Awesome. Well, that's cool. That's actually something probably everybody that has a load stick should think about that over the winter. Send it in
Yeah,
and have it checked to make sure it's right.
we do get a lot of them in the off season, sending them in to get them checked.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. Let's see here. Jeffrey says pull bar on the rear end too far to the left will cause instant tight on throttle pickup. Basic mid corner. Yep, that's very true. It will definitely try to hook the left rear up too fast. And what happens is it unloads the right front a little bit, and then all of a sudden the car doesn't want to turn. So you're totally correct, Jeffrey. Thanks for that comment. Chris says, what is your thoughts on a USRA stock car with a 9-inch rear end compared to a quick change rear end? And the opinion which quick change would be the best, 411 or a 486? When will you be having classes this year? I don't know what the actual dates are, but the stock car one is usually the Saturday after the Daytona 500. As far as the 411 or 486, it just kind of depends on what, a lot of guys say the 411 has more gear changes, but that's also because if you run a crate motor on a half-mile racetrack, sometimes a 486 might not. I mean, you might have to be in the 470 gear range, which you could get to with that 411. I don't know. In my opinion, with a stock car, I'd probably lean towards the 486 because I don't know if you really need the gear change, but it just all depends on what, if you have gears, and you just have to look at the selection between the 411 gear sets and the 486 gear sets and kind of match that up to see what's going to be the best for you and your racetrack. Les, factory stock, 53 left side, 50 rear, 49 cross, right front frame too high. Suggest on what to change. Car is pushy center of the corner. Well, if it's pushy center of the corner, it's a good indication there's not probably enough load on that right front, or there's too much load on the left rear. But 49% cross is not a whole lot. So I would have to say it might actually be to the point where it's got too much side bite, and you might need to increase your left side weight just a little bit so that it doesn't stick that right rear so hard. Because that can easily be a push in the center. It can be if the car's rolled over, and you just have to kind of think about what it feels like. I mean, if it feels like it's laying on the right rear, that's a good indication that you either need to stiffen the spring or probably increase the left side weight just a little bit, like 1% or something. Jay, both of you have been in the racing industry for a while, with car counts at some places in eastern Iowa at a dismal low count. What do you think the reason is? Thanks in advance. Well, my opinion is the problem we got, I think, in some of these racetracks that are kind of out a little bit more in no man's land, so to speak, where there's not as many people, so to speak. I think that can have something to do with it, because of course, if the population's a little bit lower, that means there's probably less race cars, and I see that you know at some of those racetracks that the racetracks are good racetracks. They just don't. They still draw a fairly decent crowd, but they for some reason don't get the cars. What's your opinion, Chad?
Yeah, that's a loaded question. You see some areas of the country that are doing really good and some that are struggling. Maybe it is rural. A lot of it boils down to the racers need to be treated well too. The race promoters got to treat the race car drivers. Them are the guys putting on the show. So if you're nitpicking, about some quarter inch on some body panel here or something, this is a hobby, right? Most of these guys that go to the Saturday night tracks, they don't go there to get harassed. They're probably not cheating that much if they're stretching the gray area, having a little bit of fun. But, at the end of the day, the promoter needs to realize that he has to have racers. He has to have a good show to get the people in the grandstands. If you don't have the racers, you don't have a show. So taking care of the first customer, which is the race car driver, I think is the first key, keeping them guys happy, putting on a show. And then, a lot of what I see is, shows that are getting too long, too drawn out. The attention span of the human being now is less than 3 hours. So if you're dragging out the show, past the 3 hour mark, trying to get 7, 8, 9, 10 classes in, you're hurting yourself. So I see a lot of racetracks. My family was a promoter. We promoted 2 racetracks for 21 years there. So I grew up on that side of it, and then I went to working on them and getting harassed by tech men, and now I'm on the manufacturer side where I try to just do whatever I can to help the sport. So I've seen quite a bit, but a lot of the promoters need to take care of that racer, because the racer is the guy that brings the 20, 50 fans to the grandstands to put on the show, and you got to have the seats full to pay the racer to come too. So man, it's a whole big sequence of things that has to happen, and it has to happen good. And it's tough to see some of these areas struggling. That's where we try to reach out and help the most, is where the programs are struggling a little bit.
Travis says, thoughts on running a 12.5 tall right rear spring versus a 13-inch Eibach Platinum spring. Would a person notice a difference? I don't know if you're going to completely notice a difference on a half-inch spring. In theory, you should, because of course you're dropping that spring table down a little bit. If it was a 12-inch spring, I would say you'd notice an inch. I don't know if a guy would notice a half inch. What's your thoughts, Jed?
I mean, like you said, you're gonna probably notice the difference and feel a little bit of a change. And at the end of the day, it's about the whole package. So it's a 5-pound chunk of lead making a difference on the left rear. Probably not a big one, but it's making some sort of a difference. So, like you said, this is lowering the spring table, whether it's transferring 20 pounds of force, 30 pounds of force, whatever it's transferring more force through the spring table mechanically. So, a small change at that, but definitely effective.
Yeah, you bet. Okay, Kenson says he feels like I need more forward drive coming off the corner, but I have to wait on it. What would be the good adjustment? Add left front chain, GRT, USRA, BMOD. My question, Kenson, would be, you have to wait on it because it doesn't have traction. How is the car in the middle of the corner? Is the car at all tight getting in or tight through the middle? Because a lot of times, if the car's a little bit snug in the middle, or it's loading the right rear a little harder, where it's kind of lugging the motor just a little bit, that's a pretty good chance where that car is going to be a little bit looser coming off the corner. We had a guy the other night at Boone, and actually it's a good customer of ours. And I've kind of harped on his crew chief for a couple 3 weeks that he's too tight. He needs to drive that thing freer, and you need to set it up freer. And I said he's not going to like it because he's pretty secure with that right rear stuck in the dirt, but it's costing him some corner speed. And well, needless to say, that guy almost won Saturday night. Should have won Saturday night. Um, but then he was complaining on how loose the car was. But he passed the most cars. Oh, I can't drive it. It's too loose. Well, looks like he did a pretty good job to me. So, that a lot of times that mid corner deal can really cost you traction off. Um, of course, there's bar angles, and adding left front chain will definitely help the car off the corner. It definitely gives you more forward traction. There's no doubt about that. That would definitely help. Um, I would just make sure that it's not too much on the right rear. Now, if you add left front chain, it's going to take it off the right rear a little bit. So that might actually help free the car up a little bit getting in and tighten it up a little bit getting off. Justin says, do you feel that adding some gear freezer tightens up the race car? So in other words, 567 versus a 583. Well, it kind of depends on the engine combination, and it kind of depends on the driver. Um, in my opinion, I would probably pick a 583 over a 567 if I was on a short racetrack, because I don't, and actually a 583, if this is a modified, 583 is going to be a short racetrack. I would definitely think that the 583 is going to give you a little bit more response off the corner. It might hit the chip a little sooner getting in, and once you feel it hitting the chip, just don't back off the throttle. Just kind of let up on the throttle just a little bit and let it carry itself into the corner. That would be my opinion. I think, in answer to your question, I think adding some gear, I don't know if it'll tighten up the race car, but I think it will make the car quicker. If you went to the 567, that definitely would tighten it up a little bit, because you're going to have less RPM on the bottom end, and that's going to make the car feel a little bit tighter. Problem with that is, if you break the tires loose, then it's just going to spin more. Nick, does the spring table on the front of a stock car go by the screw jack nut or the frame or top of the spring cup? What's your thoughts on that, Chad?
It's the tip of the screw jack. So the spring cup, whether it's a drop bearing cup or top bearing cup, all come into a play, and spring height comes into play too. So generally, we like to run a top bearing cup on the left front and a drop bearing cup on the right front to get that spring table lower on the right front than the left front. So it's definitely the tip of the screw jack, not where the screw jack nut is on the frame.
Warren says that he has a UMP style modified with a 602 type motor and a lift bar. Car turns well, but we struggle for instant traction. It seems to be worse on restarts. Any suggestion? Well, I hate to tell you, but a lift bar is probably going to be that way unless you have an 8-inch spoiler or something on the back of it, because the lift bar doesn't necessarily give. The lift bar is outstanding on a momentum type racetrack. Jason said I missed. Sorry, Jason, I'll get you this time. Um, it's really good on traction on a momentum type racetrack, but on a start type deal, they don't always transfer the weight. And like I said, unless you've got lots of body panels and a big spoiler in the back, the lift arm works well there. I would consider a spring bar, spring torque link of some type would be my suggestion. Let's see. It's got to go back up to Jason. I noticed when I got the car back in the shop and up on this chain or up on the lift, my chain on the left front is twisted up, making the chains tighter. What would you do to the car? Um, what's
Basically,
your thoughts on that question?
basically made the chain shorter.
Yeah, the chain twisting, that means it needs to be shorter. That would make sense. Jacob, free getting in, tight getting off, USRA modified. What would help it? Um, what's your thoughts, Bud? My first thought would be a Panhard bar adjustment.
Yeah, free in, tight off.
Tight off is a pretty good thing. That's usually easy to fix.
Yeah, it could be too much wedge.
Yeah, that's kind of what
Right.
I was saying. If it's free getting in, it's got too much left rear in it, so it's not getting any side back getting in. And then once it finally levels off, it's got so much load on the left rear tire that it's just the left rear tire is outworking the right front.
Yeah.
So tell us who our guest's going to be next week, Chad.
2 weeks.
2 weeks. Two
The
weeks.
$100,000 man, Cade Dillard.
Yeah, Cade Diller. That's going to be exciting. In fact, I actually watched the late model race the other night that he was in, and uh, he did a pretty good job. So yeah, $100,000 man from Mississippi Thunder.
I see his tire samples passed too. They sent in, I think Barry posted they sent in 90 samples and 20 of them were Cades and they all passed. So
Awesome.
inside, outside. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're going to do a little of that at the Harris Clash this year. We've got a guy that's running down here with us, and on the start of the races, man, he is Lightning McQueen. I mean, he can pull 4 car lengths on anybody. Then the next restart, it's only about 2.5 to 3. Then the next restart, it's only about 1, and then the fourth restart, then we're about even. So I don't know what's going on there, but I've been in this business long enough to know that if you have a lot of launch, sometimes it's not necessary torque link and suspension. Um, Russell, do you know where the stock car class will be the week after Daytona? Yeah, it'll be at the BHE shop there in Ames, Bob Harris Enterprises. Um, and if you go to either Bob Harris Enterprises website, which is bobharrisent.com, or the racetecinfo.com website, the address will be on there. And I don't know if they've got the updated dates on there or if it's still last year's dates, but I was thinking about that today on my way home, and we'll definitely get that fixed up tomorrow and get those dates updated so that, if anybody wants to register this early, they sure can. Don't forget about the Harris Clash registrations open August 6th. Um, you know, the 33rd annual Harris Clash by Weir's Machine will be another exciting night. Always a good show. Great place to race. I love going up there. Not really sure I like coming home, but I do love going up there. And the guys at the racetrack do an awesome job. The racers put on an awesome show, and like I said, registration's open at the Harris Clash website, harrisclash.com. So make sure you get registered, save your number, and there's a discount if you register early. I think it's 75 for a modified and 50 for a sport mod. So get that in before, I think it's the end of July is the deadline, and then it's if you don't register in advance, it's $100 and $75. So definitely pays to get registered early and go from there. Tim says, not really feeling the right rear. Would a 200-pound with spring rubbers be better, or should I go to a heavier spring right rear? Pro stock, 2,800 pounds. Um, I don't really see a big advantage of going to a spring rubber unless you want to change easily. I mean, that's the idea behind the spring rubbers, is so you can make a quick change in a big hurry if you need to. If you do decide to run the spring rubber, make sure that you have it all the way to the top so that it doesn't become a progressive spring that just stiffens the spring. As an example, when we used to could run spring rubbers in an IMCA car, a 175 with a spring rubber would actually dyno out at 190 pounds if we were clear at the very end of the spring where it's already dead. So that's something to think about. As far as performance, I really can't say that there's a whole lot of difference one way or the other. It's just more about convenience. If you think that you're going to go back and forth, that's pretty easy, that spring rubber deal. Um, let's see here. Jeffrey, wondering how long his fifth arm is. Shorten it up to promote traction. Yeah, that's a good point, Jeffrey. I never thought about that, because if you do shorten it up, kind of depends on the spring and shock, but if you go shorter, you probably have to go stiffer with spring. Um, Shock absorber on that fifth coil is kind of a big deal. It's a little softer compression, a little more rebound, works pretty well. But yeah, that's a definite, that would definitely help, you bet. Justin, if running a lighter 16-inch left rear spring and a 13-inch right rear spring in a stock car, and the right rear spring table is higher at ride height, is it best to put an 11-inch spring or a drop cup, and what the effect would have? I like the drop cup idea myself if you can run that. The 11-inch spring is almost too much. If you could go to a 12-inch spring, I don't know. The 11-inch spring just doesn't have a lot of travel. You're probably never going to use up the travel, but that almost makes the spring table sometimes too low. Too much of a spread from the right to left. It definitely is going to gain side bite. So I don't know. I'd give it a try and see what you think, but I like the drop cup idea a lot better.
Yeah, the stock cars, since they went to the soft, tall left rears, and that thing's pre-wound, moves that screw jack tip down quite a ways there, right? So it's been difficult to get the spring table back right on them. We make 3 different style cups now for that: raised, a standard, and a drop cup. So we're always changing the spring cups to manipulate the table. So
Well, and that's a good point that you brought up. On your left rear, Justin, I would definitely make sure I have that raised spring cup on there. Um, that have the raised spring cup on the left rear and a drop cup on the right rear would be a good combination. But with the 11-inch spring, I think you're going to get too much side bite. The car's going to roll over there and maybe want to lay there too long. Where with the drop cup, I don't think you notice that much. I think you're going to notice a little bit better side bite, but I don't think it's going to lay on the right rear as much. I mean, pretty much everything we do in the stock cars, we have the drop cup on the right rear and the raised cup on the left rear.
Hey, speaking of spring cups, I got the boys announced the new spring cups for the pull bars today.
Oh, I seen it on the internet today.
We switched them all to OD grabs, so you can run the Torrington bearings in there, and they stay lined up perfectly through travel. And so that was a nice little transition there to make the spring bars a little bit better.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Definitely, because that would be another good area for that Torrington bearing.
Let's go back to that chain. I think he wanted to know what that did with that left front chain twisted, and when you shorten the left front chain, what it does.
Okay. Well, when you shorten the left front chain, when the car goes into the corner and you get back on the throttle, it's going to roll on the right rear and lift the left front up. If you shorten that chain, what happens is instead of it getting to the right rear so much, it actually stops and goes to the left rear. So when you shorten the chain, that load, when that tries to pick that left rear up, a lot of the load goes to the left rear, which gets the car up off the corner. Now, if you're short on side bite, you might want to extend the chain to get the car on the right rear a little bit more. So it just kind of depends on the conditions, but that's kind of what the chain does. So you got any more exciting news?
Well, that guy's looking for a raised cup here. I'm trying to figure out if I got one on the counter out here or not. I don't know. I don't see a raised cup out here. Showroom. But the raised is basically the same as this cup, except the screw jack goes in, only goes in, I think, 3/4 of an inch on a raised cup. And then on the standard cup, it goes in 1.5 inches, I think, and then 2.5. So I think it's basically an inch difference. So one is a 1/2 inch below the spring, one's 1.5 below, and one's 2.5 below. So 3 options there for the left rear and the 404 family of bolt-in spring cups.
Yeah, if you go to the Weir's website and you search that spring cup, you'll see the different spring cups.
Should just have one of everything out here in the
You
showroom.
really should. We just have a whole pile of parts everywhere. That's one thing about doing this thing from home. I don't have parts at my access. But oh well. The air conditioner's working good here in the basement tonight, so I'm just thankful for that. Sean, what's your thoughts on gaining some side bite and drive? Southern Sport Mod with a 650 left front, 600 right front, 175 16-inch left rear, and a 13-inch 225 right rear. 2 offs all the way around, except the right rear has a 3. Um, you know, with those cars, you're kind of like dealing with a stock car. The only thing you really actually do is move weight to gain side bite. I mean, that's about the only real option that I'm aware of because I mean, your springs look good. I mean, 225 in the right rear looks good. 175, you might try sometimes try a 125 16-inch and compress it a little bit more so that it has a little bit more rebound in it when you get off the throttle or when you get on the throttle and it lifts up over there. But moving weight seems to be about the only thing that really changes side bite in a stock car. You could try a 4-inch offset wheel, I mean, moving that in or try a 4 with a 1/2 inch spacer, so it was only a 3.5. You could try playing with that right rear location. That's another option. Russell was really hoping for another show at Joel's this year. Well, we got a long way to decide that. Right now we're more than likely going to look at going out there. I mean, last year was a lot of fun. We had a lot of great people, and Joel did a heck of a job, campaigning that event, and so it was a lot of fun to see. I mean, just like Ted, we got to see a lot of shop customers because Joel does an awesome job. Uh, Supporting DET with shock absorbers out there. So I got to talk to a lot of shock absorbers, and I know shock absorber customers. And I know Chad got to talk to a ton of people with Weir's. Of course, he's got Weir's machines on every car in America. So that helps. Easy to go into a field of racers and talk stuff. But okay. On a three-link Northern Sport mod, can you explain the toe in and toe out on the trailing arms? Where do you start, or what would you add most drive to a dry racetrack? Um, well, like say for example, if you kind of drew a magic line on the rear end itself, where the location of the rear end is, well, actually it wouldn't matter. Um, the left the left rear I tow in 2 inches to the middle towards the middle of the car. And I tow the right side in 1 inch. What that does is I believe it helps a little bit with traction, but it really helps a lot with the yeah,
I fired up the Etch a Sketch.
awesome. Good drawing there, Chad. Um, it looks like that right rear is 1.5 inches, though. But no, it's supposed to be an inch. Um, so that works really good. I've always had good luck with it. But anyways, roll steer. The way the car, when it gets in dynamic mode, the right rear straightens out and the left rear gains angle. So then when you're under the power, under dynamic mode, the left rear is really pushing and trying to pull hard and lift from the right front to the left rear, and I think it just gains more traction off the corner. Uh, Geez, we've done that for 20 years, and I've always had good success with that particular deal.
Yeah, just like you said, whichever direction them bars are pointed is where the acceleration is going to go. We had an instance a few years back. It was an A mod, and the guy couldn't get his car freed up no matter what. Well, it turns out the chassis, some chassis builders build their 4-link brackets with, like a 5-inch spacing. So he had a short spacer and a long spacer, but he had them swapped. So it took the right upper bar and had it pointed to the door. Well, then when it went dynamic, it pointed even more to the door. And when you pick up the gas, the force is going to the door. So his car was tight dynamically no matter what he did until we found that bar toe was messed up and completely changed the whole race car.
Awesome. Sean says, when adding the lead for side bite, it? Would you prefer on the right side back by the fuel cell, or up higher closer to the driver's compartment on the crossbar? Um, I kind of like it beside the fuel cell or just in front of the fuel cell. And I want to make sure that it's up on the top of the frame. I don't like adding, if you add weight low, it's going to take roll out of the car because it's going to try to, it's kind of almost like the spring table. It's got to wait to get up and up and up and up and up, and then it rolls over. Or if you're already up there above the center of gravity, it rolls fairly easily. And so most of the time, all of our weight is right directly in front of the fuel cell. In fact, we've got that round bar that goes across the fuel cell, and we've got like a 30-pound chunk that we can loosen the clamps and slide it all the way to the left or slide it all the way to the right. And that makes a big difference. Tim says traveling 4 inches on the right rear. What are some ways to shorten that travel? Again, not feeling the right rear into the racetrack.
That's a 2,800-pound race car with a 200-pound right rear spring.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it sounds to me like you've got need more spring. Yeah, go ahead, Chad.
It's just too soft. Yeah, I think we were on that before, and then I seen that it was a 2,800 pound race car once we got past there. But that's I gotta believe your left rear is probably like probably a 175 then or something like that. And that's for a 2,800 pound race car, you need to increase rate for sure.
Yeah, I would say you definitely need a 250 back there. I mean, we've got some cars that are running 300s back there. They're 2,900 pound cars. 4 inches is a lot. That's very rare. And what's happening in that soft spring, because like you said, you aren't feeling the right rear. Well, it's because the spring is taking up all the load and compressing, and it's not actually loading the right rear tire and giving any force on the right rear tire.
20-inch, 100 pound left rear. That's I just don't think that's enough spring rate in a 2,800 pound car.
Yeah, that sounds a little light. Boy, that thing would have to really be compressed a lot on that heavier car. Um, we're in that 150 range on that heavier car on the left rear. I'm not a huge fan of that 20-inch spring because I think it's got too much spring that it can bow. And, we run the 16-inch. I'm not saying a 20-inch doesn't work. It's just, it's a lot of spring. And especially with that 100 with a 20-inch spring, as much as that compressed, that thing's got to have a lot of bow in it.
What's your plan this weekend?
Um, well, the last 2 Friday nights I went fishing. And that's been pretty good. So we'll have to see what the wind is like. But it's a lot of fun to be out there in that lake trying to, I only caught one fish. It was a big fish, but I only caught one. My son-in-law caught probably 15. And then and Saturday night, I don't know. Um, we'll have to see how that goes. I mean, I'm not doing anything special. Kind of been working on things for the Harris Clash. We're working on a t-shirt design right now because we got to get that done here in the next week. And working on a new t-shirt design for the BHE t-shirt. And of course, I'd like to get that done this week. So I've been kind of busy with some of that stuff and busy with the Clash and trying to promote that. We did an interview with Tim Ward and uh, oh, God, my mind went blank. Last year's Sport Mod winner.
Cam?
Oh yeah, Cam Ringers. Did an interview with Cam on Saturday that will be airing here pretty soon on Facebook, and we're gonna do some more. Try to get in a couple more interviews here in the next couple of weeks. I've got 2 interns right now that are working on stuff. I had a new guy start today. My other guy, he'll be leaving us mid-July sometime. That's the interns do a great job. They just don't last long. Right when you kind of get used to them, they're headed in their next direction. Which I mean, I understand that's the case. It's the way it goes. You guys have been doing a good job. A lot of the stuff I've seen on the internet lately has been pretty good.
Yeah, we have a lot of fun. Barney, Justin's really good at it, and Colby, them two are the dynamic duo. They got so much good stuff, a lot of good content. They're really good at what they do, and I joke with Barney that someday he's going to get a call and I'm going to lose him to somebody way more famous than Weir's Machine.
Yeah.
But we have fun. They try to get me to do a lot of these reels and talk about the product, and it's tough when I'm busy running around. But we try to do the best we can informing the people, and them guys have really good content for that.
Well, you had an episode last week, wasn't it, about the calibration of the load stick?
Yeah, I was about. Well, I had this guy. Yeah, I did that
Oh,
guy. Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
cool. Well, that one was good. And then the one I didn't completely watch it, but it was you were walking down an aisle or something,
Oh,
talking about
yeah,
what was
load
that one
machines.
about?
Load. We got.
Oh, yeah, that's right. It was the used
Yeah,
load machines.
we do have a few of the used ones left. So anybody that's in the market thinking about a used Ultraforce machine, we got used autos and used manuals in stock. So we can help you save some money there and get them things back to use.
We'll try to bring that used one up to you for the Harris Clash that we got.
Swap that out for a new one.
No, that one we brought back from Pennsylvania.
Oh, that's right. You were the Bob Harris Trucking Company. That's right.
Yeah,
So we got another used one that's been sitting there
yeah.
waiting to get
I
refreshed.
seen that out there today, and I'm thinking, I wonder if he even remembers we have this thing.
Nope.
Um, Mike wants to know, why would you run a 13-inch left front spring and an 800-pound right front spring on a stock car? Would this help on side bike on entry? Yeah, it definitely would. That's a lot of spring split. Um, Usually I try to keep it within a couple 100 pounds. Like if I was running a 1300, or of course, I still believe an 800 is on the verge of soft on those cars. And we've got some guys that are running it, but 900 seems to be a little bit more common. And 1100 is pretty much what we see the guys down here running. I'm not saying that they're not running 13s, but our customers wise are pretty much in that 1100-pound range. But in answer to your question, that real stiff left front's going to keep right rear in the car getting in, and it's definitely going to help on side bite. Yeah, there's no doubt about it. Tim, so if my fronts are too light, is a 950 left front and a 900 right front too light?
This is the
Uh,
2800 pound car. He's should have said it. My rears are too light. So that 2800 Pro stock has a 950 and a 900 in the front.
I wouldn't say that that's too light. In fact, actually, the 950, if you needed a little bit more side bite getting in, you could go up to an 1100 on that, because that's where we're at. And most of our stuff is 1100 and a 900. That seems to work really well. So if my rears are too light, what about my fronts? No, I think you're good on the front. If once again, if you felt that you needed a little bit more side bite getting into the corner, making the car a little bit tighter on the right rear, I'd stiffen that left front. But that right front, that's pretty common what we're running down here.
In my opinion, that low spring split's probably saving that 200.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, I would agree with that. Oh, we have all kinds of stuff here. Luke, what is the effect when you increase the difference between the right rear upper and the right rear lower links on a modified? Example, if you have a 17-inch upper and a 15-inch lower, and go to a 17-inch upper and a 14-inch lower, and also what is the effect on the right rear feel when you lower both links on the right rear versus just upper or lower?
Whew.
Well, I can tell you the car's going to respond quicker on the throttle with that 14-inch lower. That's definitely, in my opinion, I kind of like that. We've done some experimenting, or I shouldn't say we, Bobby's done some experimenting lately and seemed to have some success with that. The effect on changing them both, if you lower the right upper, the car's going to feel lazy. You're going to have more traction off the corner, but it's going to feel lazy because you don't have the dynamic bar angle in it helping stick the right rear. The right rear lower, you're going to feel more on corner entry. If you lower it, it's going to be tighter. If you raise it, it's going to be looser because you're going to gain more rear steer. What are your thoughts, Chad?
I think that's about right. Yeah, I mean, I don't know anybody that really does both of them at the same time on the chassis side. You're usually doing one or the other, the top or the bottom. Um, and then the length, that 14 is going to speed up that roll center or roll steer change coming off the corner. So some guys actually balance, taking a little angle out and having a shorter arm to get the quicker motion. So, I guess I haven't done any of that experimenting with a 14 there, but
Joshua, do you set ride heights and scale with standard rate left rear spring instead of preloaded? And right front and left rear shock disconnected. Getting ride heights correct with standard and then putting the preload in it and all ride heights, the scale numbers are all messed up. I used to do that, but now I scale it with the actual springs you're going to run. So I scale it with the soft left rear and adjust accordingly. I don't actually take the left rear, I don't unhook the left rear shock. The left rear shock, if it's a normal gas pressure shock, it's probably 125 pounds, 150 pounds, whatever, is going to add about 20 pounds of static bite to the car. So in other words, if you set it up with 60 and you have the shock unhooked and you bolt the shock on, it's going to add 20 pounds of bite to it. The problem with that is, though, once the shock hits the racetrack, that bite's not there. So you kind of got to ignore it a little bit. So I always leave the left rear hooked. I always unhook the two front shocks. And the biggest reason is with a lot of the tie down that we do, that right front, if you leave that hooked up, a scaling deal can take forever because it never wants to come back up off the shock and you have to wait and wait and wait and wait. So I just unhook the both front shocks and leave the two rear shocks hooked up. Chris, Bob, when does your shop get busy for repairs and etc. before the off season? We've been pretty steady all the way around. October is actually normally a slower month for us. It kind of depends on car sales. If we have a year where we sell some cars early, then October is pretty busy. But normally it's the old adage, October is always our slowest month and March is our biggest month. I mean, that seems to be kind of the industry standard. But we can work in. You just have to call down there and talk to Brandon and set up an appointment, and we can get you in and get anything done you need to get done. Right now, they're working on a couple new cars, but we still could work something in because we've got three guys in the back shop, and so they stay fairly flexible.
So July 8th, that's the next one.
Yep, July 8th is our next show. Special guest will be Clay Dillard, the $100,000 man. Now he's out there racing a bunch of late model shows, World Outlaw shows.
Independence tonight. Get home.
Yeah, Independence tonight, Webster City tomorrow night. If I wasn't so tight on that freaking prick pass that they'll probably have, I'd go up there and meet him and talk to him. Because it's only 30 miles from my house. Yeah, I put on a good show at Webster City. That racetrack's a nice racetrack. Independence is a nice place too. Those guys always do a good job, and they have that racetrack well prepared. The modifieds are running up there tonight. I think Webster City, I think they've got sport mods. Bob, how many new cars do you sell in a year on the average? Kind of depends on the year, but normally with our schedule and our staff that we have, we can probably we have average between 12 and 15 cars a year. We don't sell as many. I mean, I'd like to sell more, but that's what we can produce. and still give the customer a good timeline so that they're not backed up. A lot of times we sell more turnkey stuff, where the motor's sent in, and when we're done with it, it just needs to be put graphics on it. I mean, it's scaled and has fuel in it, and it's ready to go. But we'll sell them any stage, but that's how a lot of them that we do sell. Joshua, what about the overall wheelbase? Prefer shorter or longer? Longer is easier to drive. Shorter is quicker to respond. Um, I think a 108-inch wheelbase car would definitely, that's kind of my choice for a modified. Of course, that's our rules. We used to build 110-inch wheelbase cars. Those cars were really good, but as time has evolved and the suspensions have evolved and all the other stuff has come about, I think the 110 car is a little too slow in the middle of the corner. Sean, IMCA USRA stock car. Without explaining my entire car, what's a way to get on the throttle sooner coming off the corner? Always feels like racers around me can get on the throttle sooner than I can. Um, it's just about left rear traction, and once again, it kind of depends on. I mean, I don't know what kind of car you actually have, but I mean, if you've got a sport mod or a Southern sport mod, Southern sport mod, just as much angle as you can put legally in that left rear trailing arm, and the least amount of angle you can put in that right rear trailing arm is definitely going to help you get off the corner the best. I don't know. I'm not that familiar with the Southern sport mod rules, so I wouldn't be a good one to go into it in depth. But that's
Stock
kind of
car.
stock car.
He's a stock car. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, well, see the stock cars, you can get about 20 degrees of angle in that left rear, and then you can run that right rear fairly flat. If traction's what you're needing, if you run the right rear a little flatter, the car can kind of get a little snug in the middle of the corner because you're taking a little steer out of it. So you got to kind of pick and choose there. Where is momentum better, or is it more instant traction that you're looking for? Um, Before they had the ride height rules this year, where we could run more angle in that left rear, uh, the traction was a lot easier to get. Okay, Tim, Northern Sport Mod again. What is the best way to get the left rear to walk under the car? Does it have to do more with length or angle of the trailing arm? Has more to do with angle of the trailing arm. What I actually like to see is I run my left rear an inch longer than my right rear, because I don't want the action to be too fast, but then I can run more angle to the point where it doesn't load the tire so hard in the middle of the corner, but it seems to load the tire better up off the corner. And that seems to work pretty well. Well, guys, I tell you what, it was a great night tonight. Lots of great questions. Um, we'll see you here in 2 weeks. And like I said, next 2 weeks from now, we'll have Kay Dillard as a special guest. So I'm excited about that. And have a great weekend racing this weekend and next weekend. And hope you're not in the area of Northwest Iowa where everything's underwater. So good luck, everybody, and have a good night. Thanks, Chad.
Yep. Thanks, everybody.